Before we zoom out from this, I just want to note that the mayor of Kenosha, John Antamarian, has released a statement regarding the president's claim that there were angry mobs trying to get into his house. The mayor wrote in part, quote, "Nothing of the sort happened. The statement in the president's video is completely false. The city of Kenosha remains peaceful and focused on healing our community," unquote. That's a statement from Kenosha's mayor, John Antamarian. President Trump is taking reporters' questions now in Kenosha. Let's listen.
Problem in this country.
Well, you just keep getting back to the opposite subject. We should talk about the kind of violence that we've seen in Portland and here and other places. It's tremendous violence. You always get to the other side. Well, what do you think about this or that? The fact is that we've seen tremendous violence, and we will put it out very, very quickly if given the chance. And that's what this is all about. Yeah, I keep hearing about peaceful protests. I hear it about everything. And then I come into an area like this and I see the town is burned down. I mean, you look at Minneapolis, they should have acted much quicker. When we got the National Guard in there, it took literally a half an hour. You saw the scene. They formed, they walked, it was over. And they haven't had a problem of any consequence since. Their police weren't allowed to do the job that they could do. They have a very good police department, but they weren't allowed. Now they want to break it up. They want to end it. They don't want to have a police department. They want to not only defund, they want to get rid of it. It's ridiculous. So I just say this, that the kind of violence that I saw, you may have protesters, but you have some really bad people, too. You have anarchists, and you have the looters, and you have the rioters. You have all types. You have agitators. And that's what you should be focusing on with your question. I keep hearing about peaceful protests. It's become really, I think it's hurt the media very badly, because you'll have somebody standing on one of the networks, I won't say which one, but there are more than one, many of them, saying how it's a peaceful protest, and over the shoulder you see the whole place is burning down. It's become a pretty common sight. So I don't view the peaceful protest. I think peaceful protesting is fantastic. I think it's great. But by and large, this is not peaceful protest. When you walk into an area and you see buildings that have burned down, and fortunately here we stopped it early, and so the damage is relatively minimal. But when you look at some of these areas that they just don't ask for the help, they refuse to allow us to go in and help them. And by the time you get there, the place is disintegrated. And then they say it was a peaceful protest. It's not a peaceful protest, and you shouldn't call it a peaceful protest. Okay, one more, please.
Pastor, for the pastors, answer my question, please. My question was to the pastors.
Say it again.
The peaceful protests that have happened.
You're going to have to speak up, sir.
The peaceful protests that have happened, you've acknowledged some of them are peaceful. They're calling for structural change. Mr. Blake was shot, something like 7 times in the back.
Sure.
Do you believe that there is a need for structural change? What is your message?
Well, I think people are calling for structural change, and then you could take the people of Kenosha that aren't here and that you won't see and that aren't protesting, but they want change also. They want to see law and order. That's the change they want. They want law and order. They want the police to be police. They want the police to do what they do better than anybody else in the world, and that's what they want too. You don't see them marching and you don't see them on the streets, but what they want is they want great police force. They want people that are going to keep them safe, where their houses aren't broken into, where they're not raped and murdered. That's what they want. And they're protesters too, but they don't walk down the street, up and down the street. So, you know, just the way it is. Just the way it is. So I want to thank you all, and I'll see you back at the plane. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's President Trump speaking after a law enforcement summit in Kenosha, Wisconsin, attended by, among others, the acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf to his left. Now crossing to his left, Attorney General William Barr and Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. We heard him taking some questions from the press just there at the end, saying that what the people in Kenosha want is law and order, essentially not answering a question about whether or not there is a need for structural change in the way that criminal justice is enacted between people who are black and people who are white. This is a good place to bring in the Reverend Al Sharpton. He's president of the National Action Network and the host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, which just celebrated its 9th year on the air. Rev, I keep hearing the president make this comparison between protesters and agitators and talking about law and order in opposition to justice. Protesters are agitators, aren't they? I mean, isn't that kind of the point of a protest, to agitate for change?
It is interesting to me that when he first took office, he talked about Frederick Douglass. He mistakenly thought he was still alive, but Frederick Douglass was the one that would say, agitate, young man, agitate. That was his admonition. So the president doesn't apparently know the difference. But the irony of this, Joshua, is that the only one that we've seen kill anyone in Kenosha is a Trump supporter who killed 2 people. The looting and any of the rioting has been denounced by the family of Blake and by the community, but there has been far more nonviolent protests than there's been looting. The problem is not getting those of us that are in the community of civil rights to denounce looting. The problem is getting those on the other side to denounce wrong shooting. The shooting 7 times in the back of an unarmed man is the issue here that started all of this, which is not being addressed. And he talks about a protest. We had tens of thousands of people less than a mile from the White House on Saturday, and the Blake family, and George Floyd family, and Breonna Taylor's mother and others. And there was not one incident, not one arrest. So when he talks about this, he's trying to overplay some that are wrong to try and broad paint the issue so he does not have to deal with the issues at hand. And that is what I think is why this is a political ploy today to go to Kenosha. I think that the governor and the mayor and the head of the local NAACP chapter asked him not to go. I did not go. I had prayer on the phone with the mother of Blake this morning. I didn't go because I didn't want them to say, well, why would you have Sharpton come if you didn't want Trump to come? But I think that clearly he's playing politics. He is not talking about law and order because law should have protected Jacob Blake Jr.
Before we zoom out from this, I just want to note that the mayor of Kenosha, John Antamarian, has released a statement regarding the president's claim that there were angry mobs trying to get into his house. The mayor wrote in part, quote, "Nothing of the sort happened. The statement in the president's video is completely false. The city of Kenosha remains peaceful and focused on healing our community," unquote. That's a statement from Kenosha's mayor, John Antamarian. Rev, I think the political calculus here is obvious. The president's playing to his base. He's building on the messaging from the convention. Today marks 3 months since protesters were cleared out of Lafayette Square, so the president could have that photo op with the Bible in front of St. John's Episcopal Church. A few days later, you gave George Floyd's eulogy. You noted that white and black people were marching across the country, shouting no justice, no peace. How do we keep all of this in perspective? I'm not sure how we get from these protests or the president's visit to advancing justice for people of color. I thought that was supposed to be the point, and it feels like we are way off the point right now.
Well, that's why I think that we've got to stay on the point and not play to his theater. And the point is we need federal legislation, the George Floyd Policing and Justice Act that has already passed the House of Representatives, because that was part of the reason we had the big march on Friday, because unless we have legislation and then enforce it by being able to vote and elect those that will enforce it or make sure it's enforced, we will end up with it ending this summer, Joshua, with people saying, oh, it's a summer discontent, but everything remains the same. We cannot afford that, because when you look at the litany of cases, when we had the march and brought all the victims' families up, people were amazed that all of those people were there for the same kind of pain. And most of them happened in the last 3 or 4 months. We've had Arbery, Rashad Brooks, George Floyd. Now we have the case there in Kenosha. All of this happened in the last 3 months. How many times are you going to say this is an isolated incident? It is not an isolated incident. There needs to be structural change, and there needs to be a president that will address structural change.
Well, in regards to what it takes to make that structural change happen, let me play you one more clip from the Fox News interview that Laura Ingraham did with the president that aired last night. Here is what he said regarding Democrats supposedly destroying the suburbs. Listen.
They want low-income housing, and with that comes a lot of other problems, including crime. May not be nice to say,
You're not saying all
but
poor
I'll
people
say
are
it.
criminals, though.
No, I'm not saying that at all, but it does. There is a level of violence that you don't see. So you have this beautiful community in the suburbs, including women, right? Women, they want security. I ended where they build low-income housing project right in the middle of your neighborhood. I ended it.
Well, the president did mention that he ended a low-income housing program. Joe Biden would expand it. That moment where Laura Ingraham edited him caught my eye because it wasn't the only such moment in that interview. Rev, the president's rhetoric hasn't changed. It's ramped up, but it hasn't changed. How confident are you that the president's rhetoric will fail to win him a second term? It worked in 2016 in the quiet ways. Do you think it'll work in a louder way?
Even in 2016, he came in almost 3 million popular votes short. The question will be getting the counties and states that the Electoral College will not be able to be tilted his way. And that's going to be the challenge, which is why we are putting out a voting brigade with National Action Network and other civil rights groups. You've got to get out there and protect the vote and get people to come out to vote. But I think that the president's outright racist, this is not even dog whistling, this is outright screaming. When you talk about, I mean, like today, the answer to that last question you just showed, where he said where people will come in and rob and rape you. I mean, this is straight out of the 19th century kind of, the blacks are coming to rape your women. This kind of stuff, I think, will make people understand that this is bigger than whether you're a Republican or Democrat. This is about you, whether you believe in a country that should deal with people equally and fairly. To say that low-income housing, let's remember now, he was accused of discrimination in his own real estate business, and they had to settle with the federal government. So this is not just Trump as president. This is Trump as we knew him in New York.
Reverend Al Sharpton, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation. Always good to see you, Rev. Thanks very much. Coming up.